Welcome to today's grammar lecture on the causal use of preposition ba, psychological state verbs, and ordinal numbers. Let's begin by talking about the causal use of ba. This is a relatively rare use of ba that specifically marks a noun as the reason or cause of some verb. Let's look at one example from Genesis 18. This is Abraham pleading with God. Ulai yachserun chamishim hatzadikim chamisha. Hatashchit bachamisha et kol ha'ir. So he says, perhaps 50 of the righteous ones are lacking 5. Will you destroy, because of 5, the whole city? So what's happened is Abraham has already talked God down to sparing Sodom and Gomorrah if he will find 50 righteous persons. And now he's saying, okay, 50 minus 5. Will you go for 45? Or are you going to destroy the whole city because of those 5 people that you find lacking, if indeed you don't find 45 righteous people? And the causal use of ba is also at play in the morphologically very complex interrogative that occurs in Jonah 1, 7, and 8. The interrogative has 2 varieties, be'shel mi and ba'asher le'mi. But if you split them into their distinctive parts, you see that each part corresponds exactly. The only difference is she versus asher, but she and asher are each just relative pronoun. Now, if you translate it woodenly, you have in that to who? How does that make any sense? Well, first, I take the la to indicate possession. And so I can give a little bit smoother of a translation, taking this as causal ba, because of that which belongs to whom. Okay, a little bit better, but how do we make sense of even that? Here's my take. The sailors assume when they ask this question, right? Because of that which belongs to whom is this evil upon us? The sailors assume that someone did something to provoke the divine anger. And here, they're just caring about who did it, not what was done, right? The assuming part is because of that which belongs to somebody. They know the evil is because of some evil deed that belongs to someone, but really the force of what they're asking is the whodunit question. Who did this evil deed? Next, emphasis and psychological state verbs. First, you probably are asking, what is a psychological state verb? Well, it's a specific kind of stative verb. So we've looked at stative verbs before, which describe a state of being like to be strong. Well, chazak, to be strong, is a physical state of being. Psychological state verbs, that's the state of your mind, so emotions, etc. What we'll be looking at here is how do you emphasize that psychological state verb. Here's samach, and a common way which you would expect is this, vayismach me'od, and he rejoiced greatly, or and he was very happy. Now, this is in the book of 1 Kings. Elsewhere, we get the verb samach, but then we get this different construction that is surprising. Usmechim simcha gedolah. And they, because this is a masculine plural participle, and they were rejoicing a big joy. What? Or, and they were happy, a great happiness. So this is the construction. You have some psychological state verb, and then you have the related noun form of that verb followed by gadol or gedolah, depending masculine or feminine. What's weird is that psychological state verbs don't take objects, but this construction is as if this were the object where you do something, you do a happiness, even though that doesn't seem to be able to work syntactically. Well, here I won't be worrying about the syntax of this construction, but just to say that this construction does seem to be a way to emphasize the psychological state verbs even more than me'od. So if you do me'od as greatly, what's even more than that? I don't know, exceedingly, something like that. So they were exceedingly joyful would be one way that you could translate number 3. This construction of emphasizing psychological state verbs is something that the author of Jonah seems to have a special kind of affinity for. So here's one example. Vayir'u ha'anashim yir'a gedolah. And the men were afraid, so psychological state of being fearful. They were afraid of great fear, meaning they were exceedingly fearful. Or another verb, this one is a little surprising. Vayera el Yonah ra'a gedolah. And it was evil from ra as a pa'al verb. It was evil to Jonah, a great evil. Where how is to be evil a psychological state verb? Well, if it was evil to Jonah, then Jonah must have viewed it as being evil, and it was exceedingly evil in his eyes when he saw that everything was A-okay with Nineveh after they repented and God didn't send judgment. And finally, we have in Jonah, this is going to be at the end of the book, when God brings up the plant, Vayismach Yonah simcha gedolah. And Jonah was happy, a great happiness. As we saw in the previous slide, Jonah was exceedingly happy. And finally, ordinal numbers. Now, you may not be familiar with the terminology cardinal versus ordinal, but you know this concept intuitively as a native speaker, that you use cardinal forms for numbering things. So if you're counting people in a room, you use these forms, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you use the ordinal numbers for putting things in order. So if you're talking about people standing in line, the first person in line, second person, third, fourth, fifth, etc. Now, this same concept applies exactly in Hebrew as it does in English, that Hebrew uses different forms for numbering things versus ordering things. Really, the only thing to add in Hebrew is that all of the ordinal numbers are syntactically adjectives. So as far as the syntax of them, you can go back and listen to the adjectives lecture, and whatever I said about that applies exactly to these numbers. And then with the cardinal numbers, number 1 is syntactically an adjective, while 2 through infinity are nouns. What I'll do here is I'll read off the numbers 1 through 10, comparing the cardinal and ordinal numbers. For counting people in a room, one person, echad, or a woman, achat. First person in line, a man, rishon, a woman, rishonah. Now, something to say here is rishon is derived from the noun for head, rosh. So the head of the line is rishon. The rest of the ordinal numbers will be pretty clearly derived from the cardinal numbers, just shortened. And the masculine number will end in chirik yod, while the feminine number will end in chirik yod tav. So we have 2 people in the room, shnaim, shtaim. Second person in line, shnei, shenit. 3 people in a room, shlosha, shalosh. Third, shlishi, shlishit. 4, arba'a, arba, fourth, revi'i, revi'it. Now, this looks to be an exception, but really, it's the same thing as 4 except with the aleph. What's going on there? We have two options. Either the cardinal number adds an aleph, or the ordinal number gets rid of the aleph. You may not really care one way or the other, so let me just say my view is that the cardinal number adds the aleph. All right, 5, chamisha, chamesh, fifth, chamishi, chamishit. And 6, shisha, shesh, sixth, shishi, shishit. 7, shiv'a, sheva, seventh, shvi'i, shvi'it. 8, shmona, shmone, eighth, shmini, shminit. 9, tish'a, tesha, ninth, chi'i, chi'it. And finally, 10, asara, eser, 10th, asiri, asirit. And so you've memorized pretty much all of the cardinal numbers. You'll only memorize the ordinal numbers for 1 through 3, but for the most part, the ordinal numbers are the cardinal numbers except shortened. The masculine will end in cleric yod, the feminine will end in cleric yod tav. The only one that doesn't really fit the pattern is the term for first, and you have that memorized, rishon, rishona.